The voyage should have lasted only a few days. More than a century later, nobody knows how it ended. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. In March 1918, one of the largest ships in the United States Navy disappeared without leaving a single confirmed trace. More than 300 people were aboard. No distress signal was received. No wreckage was found. No survivors were ever located. The vessel was known as USS Cyclops, and more than a century later, its fate remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in maritime history. What happened to the ship has been debated for generations. USS Cyclops was a large cargo ship operated by the United States Navy. Its job was simple. It carried fuel, supplies, and other important materials across the ocean. At the time, it was one of the largest ships in the American fleet. The vessel played an important role during the First World War, when countries relied heavily on sea transport to move resources between distant ports. Few people could have imagined that such a large ship would one day disappear without a trace. The world was in the final stages of the First World War. Nations depended heavily on ships to move materials, equipment, and resources across oceans. Every voyage carried significance, and delays could affect military operations far from home. USS Cyclops regularly transported coal and other cargo needed to support naval activities. By early 1918, the vessel had already completed numerous successful journeys and was considered a reliable part of the American fleet. In January 1918, USS Cyclops left the United States and headed into the Atlantic Ocean. The journey began much like many of its previous voyages. The ship made several stops along the way while carrying cargo and passengers between ports. Life aboard followed a familiar routine, and there was little reason to expect trouble. Crew members performed their daily tasks, and the voyage appeared to be progressing normally. Nothing during those early weeks suggested that this would become the ship's final journey. One of the most important stops occurred in Brazil. There, USS Cyclops took on a large shipment of manganese ore, a material used in the production of steel. The cargo was valuable and in high demand during the war. Once loading was complete, the vessel prepared to continue north toward the United States. The additional weight significantly increased the ship's burden, but transporting heavy cargo was part of its normal mission and did not immediately raise concerns. After leaving Brazil, the ship traveled to Barbados, where it arrived in early March 1918. This would become the last confirmed location in the vessel's history. Reports from the stop indicated that the ship appeared operational, though some accounts suggested mechanical issues may have existed. Such problems were not unusual for large vessels of the era. After taking on supplies and making preparations for departure, USS Cyclops left port and headed north. The planned route from Barbados to the eastern United States crossed a large section of the Atlantic Ocean. Under normal conditions, the voyage should have taken only several days. The ship carried hundreds of people, including sailors, naval personnel, and civilian passengers. Families expected news of a safe arrival. Instead, communication ceased completely. As days passed without word from the vessel, uncertainty gradually began to spread among naval officials and relatives alike. At first, there was little reason for alarm. Radio communication at sea was not always reliable, and delays occasionally occurred. Ships could encounter weather, mechanical difficulties, or routing changes that affected schedules. Naval authorities initially assumed the vessel would arrive after a minor delay. However, as more time passed without any message, concern increased. The absence of communication became more difficult to explain, especially for a ship of Cyclops' size and importance. Eventually, it became clear that something unusual had happened. USS Cyclops had failed to reach its destination, and no port reported receiving the vessel. Search efforts and inquiries began, but investigators faced an immediate challenge. The Atlantic Ocean covered an enormous area, and there was no confirmed location from which to begin. Without a distress call, eyewitness account, or reported emergency, the ship seemed to have disappeared into the vastness of the sea. As officials gathered information, they discovered a troubling fact. No verified distress signal had ever been received from the ship. In many maritime disasters, even brief radio messages provide valuable clues about a vessel's final moments. In the case of USS Cyclops, there was nothing. The silence itself became part of the mystery. Whatever happened appears to have unfolded without producing any confirmed warning that could guide investigators toward an explanation. The disappearance quickly attracted national attention. More than 300 people were aboard the vessel, making it one of the largest losses in United States naval history. Families searched for answers while officials examined every available report. Yet the investigation produced few immediate leads. No confirmed debris fields were discovered. No lifeboats were reported. No reliable witness accounts emerged. The lack of evidence transformed the incident from a maritime loss into a mystery that would endure for generations. Because the First World War was still underway, one of the earliest theories involved enemy action. German submarines were operating in parts of the Atlantic, and attacks on shipping were a known threat. Investigators explored the possibility that USS Cyclops had encountered hostile forces during its voyage. However, no verified wartime records confirmed such an event. After the war ended, available German naval documents provided no evidence that the ship had been attacked or intercepted. Investigators also looked closely at the condition of the ship before its disappearance. Some reports suggested that USS Cyclops may have been experiencing technical problems during the voyage. According to several historical accounts, there were concerns about one of the engines, although the exact details remain uncertain. Ships often continued operating despite minor issues, so this alone was not considered unusual. Researchers later examined whether a problem aboard the vessel could have played a role, but the lack of evidence made it difficult to know for sure. Another area of interest involved the cargo carried aboard the ship. The vessel had loaded thousands of tons of manganese ore in Brazil before beginning its final journey north. Manganese was extremely dense, and some researchers later questioned whether the cargo may have affected the ship's stability. If weight distribution shifted unexpectedly during rough conditions, it could have created dangerous circumstances. Without the wreck, however, such theories remain difficult to verify with certainty. Weather conditions also became an important part of the investigation. The Atlantic Ocean is capable of producing powerful storms that can challenge even large vessels. Researchers examined historical weather records from the period in an attempt to reconstruct conditions along the ship's route. While some evidence suggested rough seas may have existed, no single weather event was identified as a proven cause. Nevertheless, environmental factors remain among the most frequently discussed explanations. One possibility considered by historians is that several challenges occurred at the same time. A heavily loaded vessel, mechanical limitations, and difficult sea conditions could have combined to create a situation that developed rapidly. Maritime incidents are often the result of multiple factors rather than a single dramatic event. In the absence of direct evidence, investigators have frequently focused on scenarios involving a combination of circumstances rather than one isolated cause. What makes the story particularly unusual is the complete absence of confirmed debris. In many maritime disasters, floating materials eventually reach shore or are discovered by passing ships. With USS Cyclops, no verified wreckage was ever recovered. This lack of physical evidence fueled speculation for decades. Every unanswered question seemed to create another. As years passed, the mystery became larger than the disappearance itself and entered the realm of maritime legend. The ship's route later became associated with a region that would gain worldwide attention, the area commonly linked to the Bermuda Triangle. Although the term did not exist when USS Cyclops disappeared, later writers often included the vessel among famous cases connected to the region. This association introduced numerous speculative theories. However, most historians and maritime researchers continue to focus on practical explanations supported by available evidence rather than extraordinary claims. Interest in the case never fully disappeared. Books, documentaries, and historical studies repeatedly returned to the question of what happened during those final days at sea. Each generation of researchers revisited the available records, hoping to uncover overlooked details. While new interpretations occasionally emerged, the fundamental problem remained unchanged. Without confirmed wreckage or direct evidence from the ship itself, many of the most important questions continued to resist definitive answers. More than a century later, USS Cyclops remains one of the largest vessels ever lost by the United States Navy outside of combat. The scale of the disappearance continues to fascinate historians and maritime enthusiasts alike. Hundreds of people vanished during a routine voyage, yet no clear explanation followed. The mystery endures not because of dramatic legends or speculation, but because so little evidence survived to reveal what truly happened in the Atlantic Ocean. Over the years, many people hoped that new technology would eventually help solve the mystery. Modern search equipment has allowed researchers to explore parts of the Atlantic Ocean that were once beyond reach. Today, shipwrecks can be located in places that would have been impossible to search a century ago. Even so, no confirmed trace of USS Cyclops has ever been found. The ocean is enormous, and large sections of the ship's possible route remain unexplored to this day. Historians have continued examining official reports, crew records, and naval correspondence from the period. Small details sometimes provide new perspectives on old mysteries. Researchers have studied everything from maintenance reports to weather observations recorded during the voyage. While these efforts have improved understanding of the ship's final journey, they have not produced the single piece of evidence needed to establish a definitive explanation. The most important answers remain hidden. One challenge facing investigators is the limited amount of surviving information. Modern ships generate enormous amounts of data, including electronic communications, navigation records, and tracking information. In 1918, conditions were very different. Documentation was less extensive, and communication systems were far more limited. As a result, historians must reconstruct events using fragments of information gathered from multiple sources, often leaving significant gaps that can never be fully filled. The mystery became even more intriguing because two sister ships connected to Cyclops later experienced unusual fates of their own. Although the circumstances differed, the stories encouraged speculation and renewed public interest in the original disappearance. Researchers caution against drawing direct conclusions from these events, yet the connections have remained part of the broader historical discussion. Such details helped keep the story alive long after the First World War had ended. Among maritime historians, the most widely accepted explanations generally involve natural and mechanical factors. A combination of heavy cargo, structural stress, rough sea conditions, or equipment problems could potentially explain the loss. These theories do not rely on extraordinary events. Instead, they reflect the reality that large vessels can sometimes face multiple challenges simultaneously. Without physical evidence, however, even the most reasonable explanations remain informed possibilities rather than proven conclusions. Some researchers have examined the design of the vessel itself. Like many large ships built during the early 20th century, USS Cyclops operated in an era when naval engineering was evolving rapidly. Standards and technologies differed significantly from those used today. Historians have explored whether structural weaknesses may have played a role. While such ideas cannot be ruled out entirely, available evidence remains too limited to support any single theory beyond doubt. The enduring fascination with USS Cyclops comes partly from the scale of the mystery. Losing a small vessel can be difficult to explain. Losing a massive naval cargo ship carrying hundreds of people is far more extraordinary. The larger the ship, the more people expect evidence to remain behind. Yet in this case, the Atlantic offered almost nothing. That absence continues to challenge assumptions about what should happen after a maritime disaster. For many years, the story has inspired writers, researchers, and documentary filmmakers. Each retelling attempts to answer the same question. What happened after the ship departed Barbados in March 1918? Some focus on weather, others emphasize cargo or mechanical concerns. A few explore less conventional possibilities. Despite these different perspectives, nearly all serious investigations arrive at the same conclusion. The available evidence is simply too limited to provide certainty. Maritime mysteries are often solved when wreckage is discovered decades later. Advances in underwater exploration have led to remarkable discoveries across the world's oceans. Ships lost during wars, storms, and remote expeditions have been located long after they vanished. This possibility keeps interest in USS Cyclops alive. Many researchers believe that if the wreck is ever found, it could finally provide the information needed to understand the vessel's final hours. Until that day arrives, the disappearance remains one of history's most compelling unanswered questions. The Atlantic Ocean preserves countless stories beneath its surface, and some continue to resist explanation. USS Cyclops occupies a unique place among them because of the number of people involved and the complete absence of confirmed evidence. Few maritime cases combine such a large loss with so little information available to investigators. More than 100 years have passed since the ship's final voyage, yet the mystery continues to capture attention around the world. New generations encounter the story and ask the same questions that troubled investigators in 1918. How could a vessel of such size simply disappear? Why was no distress signal received, and where exactly did the ship meet its fate? These questions remain unanswered despite decades of research and analysis. USS Cyclops left Barbados and began its journey north. The ship never arrived. No confirmed wreckage has been found, and no one knows exactly what happened after it left port. More than 100 years later, the story remains unfinished. Somewhere beneath the Atlantic, the answer may still exist. Until that answer is found, the fate of USS Cyclops remains unknown.